All right. I thought this was going to be a pretty interesting project, so I thought I would make a video of how this is going to come together. What we're going to do here is we're going to be making a table with a little rooftop canopy thing for parties and events. And this table has to fold completely flat, so it's easily or somewhat easily transported. There are going to be a few pieces to it, obviously. And so anyhow, I found the table online for $5, and it's a really solid little vintage table. I love the turned legs on it. It's kind of cute, and they're kind of splayed. They go out at an angle. And the main issue with the table is it's busted on the back side there. And this used to be a little drop leaf table, so it would have had a leaf on both sides, but those have been removed, which is fine for our little project. So I did lay this all out on the computer as far as the design goes, so I have a good idea of exactly what I'm going to do to put it together. But you know, just because it looks good on the computer doesn't mean it's all going to come together very easily, or the way we designed it to come together. So my initial thought was to make it a drop leaf table, possibly, and just have this front part have a little drop leaf on the front. But I decided that I don't think I'm going to do that. So, but I am going to make the front of the tabletop come out farther on the front than the back, just to give us a little, because the table itself is not very big. So but it'd be perfect to put a cake, or you know, like a little kid's birthday party. It'd be cute to decorate, and you'll see it when it all comes together. It'll be a pretty cute little table, and one that will break down. And I will show you on the back side the legs. The way they're attached now is a permanent setup, but they could be easily switched out, so the legs would attach with wing nuts. So it'll be really easy to take the legs apart, and so it will ultimately lay completely flat. So one of the things, the tabletop itself, obviously it's broken on the backside, and the tabletop itself is not in great shape. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of build a skin to go on top of this existing table. We're going to build another tabletop, which will kind of play in good to our rustic finish that we're going to do on this. So so we're going to have to cut some of this tabletop away to make room for our new tabletop. Just on mainly on the ends here, we're going to cut a couple inches off on both sides. Possibly a little bit of that front lip too. I don't really know. I'll have to take some measurements and figure that out as we go. So some of this we do need to figure out as we go. But like I said, I have a good idea of how it's all going to come together. We bought these 36-inch balusters, and one thing I liked about those is, you know, because we have the turn legs here, so this is gonna, you know, stand up on top here and hold our roof. I thought those would look really good, and these were cheap. They're only $2.50, so that's good. So let's talk about the numbers, because we see a lot of projects online, but they don't really talk about the numbers too much. So of course I do this for a full-time job, so I'm all about the numbers. And so I have to think about, well, I always work backwards. So I find this cheap little table for $5. Well, what could I do with it? Well, in this case, I want to make a piece that I can rent out. So this is not necessarily a piece that I am going to sell. I will sell it, obviously. But my main intention is to build a piece that I can rent for parties. So at any rate, we paid $5 for the table. Each one of our balusters were $2.50 at Home Depot. So we've got $10 invested in our balusters. So now we have $15 invested. We do need one 2x4 because we got to add a little bit of framework to these balusters. So we need one 2x4, which is going to cost us $5. So one 2x4, 8. We're not going to use the whole 8 foot, but so we do need one 2x4, and then we need 11 fence pickets. So here is just our treated pine fence picket. Those are $2.20 a piece. Really $2.18 technically, but we need 11 of them. So we've got about $25 invested in fence pickets. We've got $5 invested in a 2x4, so that's 30. $10 in balusters, so that's 40. And then we have the table itself, which cost us $5. So we've got $45 wrapped up in materials. So let's just say $50. So we've got $50 wrapped up in materials, and then let's talk about, well, how long is it going to take us to put all this together? And I would estimate, as far as just building it out, because I've already designed it on the computer, so I have all my dimensions, I know exactly what I have to cut and so forth, all my angles and all those things are already figured out. I spent about 2 hours doing that. So I've got 2 hours of time investing in laying it all out. And I would guess that to cut it all out, put it all together, all the things we have to do, I'm going to estimate about another 3 hours. So we'll have about a half a day invested in this. So when I'm looking at it from a labor perspective, I'm looking at about $150 to design and build it, plus the $50 it costs for the materials. So now we're at $200 invested is what we would need for the table. And then obviously profit's always a good thing to have also. So and then of course that's just to build it, that's not to finish it out. And so to finish it out, I'm guessing it's probably going to take us another probably half a day's work to finish it out. So all in, I'm you know, if I'm going to pay myself what I'd like to pay myself, we're really looking at about $300 because you've got 2 days of labor, or a day, an entire day of labor, and then the cost of the table. And you know, just thinking about it before I even really thought about putting the numbers together, I was thinking this would, a good sales price for this, I would probably start it out at $329 when it's complete. But more realistically, I like the $289 price a little bit better. I just think at $289, this would sell pretty quickly. Again, I'm not really that concerned about selling it because I'm using it as a rental. So I would probably post it for $329, and if somebody buys it, great. And if they don't, that's okay too, because we'll just rent it out. Okay, so that's the idea. And a lot of times I get my ideas from somebody else's ideas. I say, oh, they did this to that and this to that. And I've already kind of caught myself thinking about different things as I was designing this. If it goes together the way I think it will, of other things I could do, and utilize some of the design elements and make other things too that are similar to this. So at any rate, so I thought, you know, this might be interesting for those who are building and designing, you know, the whole process. Okay, so with that said, the first thing we're going to do is build our top. So we're going to build a top that's going to sit on top of this top. I'm going to cut my edges a little bit here, cut them down just a little bit. We don't need that much overhang, and you'll see why here in a minute, why that's important. So this top as it sits right here is 36 inches. Our new top is going to be 38 inches. Okay, that's just the way it worked out. And so what we need to do then is we need to cut this top back a little bit, because I need a good 3 inches right here on both sides for our new top to fit on top of this one. So I'm going to do some calculations. We're going to cut this back a little bit on both ends. I think we're okay on the depth. I don't think we're going to have to cut anything off the front. Now, if you look here on the back side, right there, where it's chipped off, you can see it's chipped off right, basically flush with our leg here. Okay, and like I said, that's not going to be visible, so that's not a concern when we build our new top over the top of this one. What are we going to build our top of? We're going to build our top out of those fence pickets. So we're going to cut, I believe it's 5 or 6 of them. I'll have to double check the plans, to 38 inches. And then we'll put all those together. Okay, so that's going to be our first step. So let me get some figuring done on the table, and then we're going to cut these back. We're just going to use the skill saw on a square, draw a line, cut it, and then we'll cut our pickets, and we'll put those together, and I'll show you how that top's going to come together. All right, let me bring you up to speed where we're at here. So we've got our 6 pieces that are 38 inches long, cut, and then I've attached all of those with a 2 3/4 inch wide cleat. And the reason we use 2 3/4 wide is because that's a fence picket cut exactly in half. So just to keep it simple. And then so once I put that cleat on both sides, now I'm just using 1-inch staples for now. I am going to come back in. I did use wood glue, 1-inch staples for the cleats, and then I'll come back in and I've got some 1-inch deck screws that will come in and put in behind all these staples just to kind of reinforce that. So definitely would recommend going back through and screwing it all down as well. So then the next thing that we determined was the distance between the cleat. So between this cleat and the far cleat over there is 32.5 inches. It's actually just a hair over 32.5. So the point is, and that is our top now has to be 32.5. So for this to kind of sit over it, it won't do it because this is too wide. Well, I guess it's too wide the long ways, yes. So that's 36 inches. So we need that to be 32.5, and then this tabletop will sit on top of it. So we're going to do the arithmetic there, and then take a little bit off on this end, take a little bit off on this end, so it'll sit perfectly left to right. Now, eventually, we're going to permanently mount this top to this tabletop eventually. But for right now, we're just going to just set it on there just to kind of put it all together and get it figured out. So that's the next thing we're going to do. So the next thing is to get that cut down, and then we're going to figure out how much overhang off the back end it's going to have. That's our next critical dimension, essentially. And I don't know exactly how far back we're going to go, but I do know that there's a future design element that we do need some space on the back side for, and I'll explain that when we get there. So let me get this table cut down, and then I'll do the calculations of what the overhang needs to be off the back end, and then we can put in our back cleat here. I'm thinking it's going to be about 4 inches, but I don't know. I'll have to go to the computer and double check things. So let me get this table cut down, and we'll go from there. I'm not sure why just yet, but I did decide to go ahead and take off the existing top. It's only a couple of screws held it on there. So I went ahead and took that top off. I may regret that choice later, but I'm not concerned about the structural integrity of the table itself, but I am concerned about holding these boards together nice and flat over the long term. And I was going to screw this table to that table to enable that. So I don't know. Like I said, I just felt like this might be a cleaner solution. But now what we have is so we have 30 inches from the point of this to the point of this leg. And if you remember previously, we were at 32.5 distance between our cleats. So now I want to be only 30 inches and actually slightly more, maybe 30 1/4 spacing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little strip of wood to enable that to sit on here. So I did go to the computer. We do need 3 inches off the back end. So that's how far the tabletop is supposed to sit off the back end. And then whatever it sits off the front end is whatever it sits off the front end. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and add a 2 3/4 cleat on the back. And that will allow us to set the table at 3 inches off, overhang off the back end. And then on the front, I'm also going to add a 2 3/4 inch cleat just to kind of cap off the front. But then I'm going from this cleat over is going to be at 18 1/4 inches, and we'll put another cleat, and then we'll work on tying all these together. Okay, so I know that none of that made sense right now, but it will once we do it and actually put it on our table. It makes sense. This does give me an opportunity to show you an issue. I mean, it's an issue, but it's not an issue. So when they built this table, it's very simplistic, but it is very, very strong. So what we have is we have a lag bolt going into our leg here. It's just a lag bolt. Now that we can't easily take apart, but so what we're gonna have to do is take this existing lag bolt out, and we'll have to go to Home Depot, but they make a lag bolt that will be a lag into the modern tables would have a lag that goes into our leg, but then out here would be threaded, and then we just thread a wing nut on there. Okay, and so that's what we're gonna have to replace this with. So we're gonna have to take this lag out, go to Home Depot or a hardware store and get the lag that's threaded and the wing nuts, so we can take these legs off when we need to fold it up flat. Okay, so that's a very simple thing. That's not a big issue at all, but we'll do that towards the end. So let me get these cleats on the table, get everything like it needs to be, and then I'll show you what I was trying to explain to you. And then you can see here we've got some pocket holes all the way around where we can actually mount the top to the table once we get to that point. So that's not going to be an issue. So let me go ahead and get that done, and then I'll show you how that's going to work. All right, so now we have our tabletop more or less finished. So we did with the 2 3/4 cleat on the back side, and then we came from that cleat out 18 1/4 inches, and then we put a 2 3/4 inch cleat on this side. I use this piece just to hold these two boards, the front two boards together. And then once I put this top on the table, I'll run a couple of cleats on the inside. I'll take some measurements to hold all of these boards together here in the middle, so it all kind of sit flat. So this dimension here, I added a little 1 inch spacer on both sides. We had 32 1/2 inches. We need 30 to clear this right here. So now what we have is we have 30 1/2. So we'll have a 1/4 inch space left or right for that to kind of sit down on top of. So we should be good to go. So we'll go ahead and put that top on there and see how it lays in there. All right, we're making good progress. So we can see now how that kind of sits in there. A little bit of space there, a little bit of space across the back, and then a little bit of space on this side. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use these existing pocket holes here, and we're going to try 1 1/4 inch screws. And what we want to do, obviously, is we want to hold the top to our table base, but we don't want to poke the screws through the top. And our pickets are only 5/8 of an inch thick, whereas the original top was a full 3/4 of an inch. I did think about the idea of doubling up our picket so we could run a little bit deeper screws, and ultimately we may have to. I'm just gonna see, there's quite a few screws, so we're gonna try use 1¼ inch, see if they'll poke through. And as long as they don't poke through, I think with as many screws as here, it'll have enough meat to hold the top securely to this table frame. But we're gonna try it out and see what happens here. So let me get this top mounted and see what I think. All right, so step one is officially complete. I do have a couple more cleats that I do have to put on the tabletop, but I just wanted to kind of show you what the table looked like with our new top on it. Okay, so now you can see what that new top, it overhangs off the front quite a little, but not so much so that it will not be tipsy. So that works really good. And we've got our overhang off the back that we need. And that overhang has to be 3 inches or thereabouts, because there's a bolt that we're gonna mount the top piece that goes on it to. So we need some space there to position our bolt. And so I'm real pleased so far with what it's looking like. Okay, so far so good. I am happy with it. There is one thing I did just notice. There's a little, watch this, I think you can maybe see it. There's a little bit of deflection in that front if you put some pressure on there. So what we can do is come back in at a later point and run a 1x, maybe like a 2x2, I guess, along the bottom here to stiffen that up. We've got enough overhang on the sides to run just for a little bit extra tabletop support, so we don't have this bending down this front edge of the tabletop. And we may do that before it's all said and done. Okay, so perfect. We're moving right along. So the top looks exactly like I hoped it would. So that part is done. We're going to add a couple of cleats just to make sure that these remain, these are nice and flat now, but we're going to add a couple of cleats in there just to make sure those boards, these two are already nailed together or stapled together. We're going to come back in and add screws to all this at the very end when we finish it off, but we are going to add a couple of cleats in there to just secure and make sure that all stays flat. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add the cleats, and then we'll get to assembling our roof structure, go from there. All right, so we do have our cleats added, and again, I am going to come back in, screw this all together. I just have it kind of temporary with glue and staples, and so now those boards should stay nice and flat. And here's what I was talking about on that overhang. So we might take, let's see if I have a piece here. Well, this will kind of give you an idea. So what we might do is right here, just take an actual 2x2 and run it the whole length, and that will give us some added strength to the top of this. If I decide ultimately we do need it, which I think I probably will do. But the other consideration when we're adding pieces to it, we want to make sure it's still manageable. As far as setting it up, taking it down, things like that. So that takes care of our tabletop assembly. That is complete. I'll just have to screw it together here when we're finally done. Now we can move on to the top pieces using our balusters that's going to support the roof. Okay, so this is what we're using for our 2 roof supports. So it's pretty straightforward. It went together basically exactly as it was planned. I don't think I'll bore you with all the pertinent dimensions necessarily. The plans obviously will have the pertinent dimensions. I guess I'll go ahead and give them to you. I just don't know if you'll gain a lot from it, but I'll just run through them quick. If you want to just try it without using plans, well, that's fine. But at any rate, we have our two 36-inch balusters, which, remember, those were $2.50 a piece. Now, I can tell you this top structure is all made out of pressure treated. I made a mistake. The bottom piece is not pressure treated because I made a mistake. I cut one piece and I shouldn't have. So, my bad. But at any rate, so our top roof support here, this angle is 60 and this one is 30. And this piece is 19 7/8 long from the longest point to the longest point. And on this one, obviously this angle is 60 on both ends, and it's 26 1/4. Okay, and then the bottom piece is 24 inches, and all you can see there is I just did a little nip. And then what we're going to do is we're going to drill a 3/8 inch hole right here. That's why I left that amount of meat there, right in the center of that, on the front and the back. And that 3/8 inch hole is going to go through our tabletop. Okay, and so we'll run a 3/8 inch carriage bolt through the top, and then we'll use wing nuts on the bottom to hold this piece to that piece and still have this be able to break down. Okay, so that's how we're going to mount it. Now, one of my next challenges, and I've built a lot of these style carts, but never really, this one I'm building just a little bit different. So I don't know if my next plan is going to work very well, but I do know one other consideration that is important is that the bottom is going to be mounted to the top, to the tabletop. So that will be nice and solid and supported. But the top, you know, these pieces that are going to hold the roof, we need something to keep them from going left to right. And I have an idea how we're going to do that with the roof panels themselves. We'll just see how it plays out once I get to that point. But at any rate, so we need to make two of them. And one thing I will point out is that the baluster is slightly smaller than our 2x4 here. And what I just did, I just cut those 1.5 inches wide. So you can see there's a bit of a reveal, if you will. Okay, so not a big deal. I just used the flat desktop, line those up, and away we go. Okay, so that takes care of that one. Now we need to make one exactly the same way. For my table, from the outside edge to the outside edge is exactly 18 inches. So that's what the plans will call for. But, you know, kind of keep in mind that this could be a freestanding piece all by itself, just sitting on top of a table, or you could use literally any table for this roof structure that we're going to build. Or you could build, you know, if you don't have a table like this that you found, you could just build your own table to set this on top of. And in fact, I probably will do that just for looks as well. But at any rate, so you can see there's really not that much to it. Now, as far as assembly goes, I have one 3.5 inch screw up from the bottom, ample glue. I like to use a lot of glue. You can see some of that glue squeeze out there a little bit. So I use, you know, be generous with the glue is what I'm saying. And so that takes care of that. And then here we have one 3.5 inch screw, but you know, it's kind of going at a bit of an angle there to get the most meat out of here. Same thing here. We got to put this piece on these before we put that together. So I have a 3.5 inch screw going down through the middle here. And then we have one 3.5 inch screw, again, at an angle coming into this piece. So lots of glue and 3.5 inch screws, but it's very, you know, very, very minimal. Okay. So that takes care of that one assembly. Now we're going to move on to our next assembly. Okay, so we now have our two roof frames put together, and they're very lightweight, don't weigh very much. So what we do have to do is we still have to drill a couple of holes in our bottom cleat here to be able to mount it to the tabletop. And now we have to cut all of our roof panels that is going to make up the roof. So all the individual pieces that will make up our 2 roof panels. So I'll go get those cut to length and we'll move on to the next step. So I kind of wanted to show you what my idea was, and also my idea and how it actually came together. So the roof panel is pretty straightforward. There is a 30-degree miter on this end, and then the cleats that hold all the individual pickets together, those cleats are also what is going to be our top spreader. So again, that's going to be mounted to the tabletop, and then we're going to need something that keeps these spread apart at a specific distance. And so I just left a gap there in the roof panel, and that is going to keep those separated at the top. So you can see we have that at the top and the bottom. But now what we need is we need a block. So I'm going to position, see that point right here should match up to that bevel. And then I'm going to put a block on the inside here, just a small block right there, that's going to catch that cleat so it won't just slide right off the roof. And that's it. And that should work real well, and of course it'll be able to break down real easy as well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to position this point at that bevel where it should be. Put a little cleat, little block of wood here out of a fence picket. That'll catch this cleat right here and keep it from sliding off. Okay, so that's really all there is going to be to this. So I'll go ahead and get that done, and then we're going to drill our holes and actually put this together once, and you can see what the finished product look like. So there's my other roof panels right there, and this is this roof panel. It's all screwed together with 1-inch screws. They're kind of hard to find. So these are the 1-inch deck screws that I get. I have to go to Lowe's because Home Depot does not carry those. And so they work really well for this particular purpose. So let me go ahead and get my holes drilled, and then we'll put it together once, and I'll kind of show you what the finished product looks like. Kind of the last step we need to take with our little sweet cart, vendor cart table is put in some new screws so we can take the legs off easily on site. So this will all lay flat. So these were the original bolts, okay? So they went through here and then into the wood of the leg. And so what we're going to switch those out with are these new hanger bolts where it's threaded up top, has the lag thread like the originals. So this will go into the wood of the leg permanently, and then this will stick out like so, where we can put our wing nut on. Okay, so it's basically more or less the same setup, just slightly different. So in order to put those in, what we need to do is we need to thread a nut on there, then thread another nut on there to be able to turn them with a wrench into our legs. And then we'll be able to take our legs on and off with our wing nut. So that's what I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and install these into our legs, and I'll show you how it all goes together with the wing nut there. So that kind of shows you the setup right there. We've got that nut on there and then another nut, and that will allow us to thread it into our leg. And I've just got a little ratchet wrench here to actually tighten that bolt up. So it's pretty. And then once you get it, I think I got it to the point where it's pretty snug. So I'll go ahead and take that out. Just kind of show you this quick. So then you just slide your leg in there. You may have to make some adjustments out here. I always think about that. Let me come back to that one. This one we may have to make some clearance here. See, there's not quite enough clearance to get it in and get it seated. So I may have to take my little flat saw and cut out a little area to give us a little bit of access to be able to slide our leg in easily. So let me figure that out. We got the right concept, but I didn't think about where I need a little bit of clearance, because before the bolt was coming in from this direction, so we didn't need clearance. But now, because the bolt's coming in from the other direction, we are going to have some clearance right here in order to get our leg to slide in there. So let me make that adjustment, and then I'll come back and show you the adjustment and show you how it all goes together. All right, let me just show you what we got here. So you can see here, we've got a little notch out there, and that notch had to go all the way back to the corner of this apron. Okay, on both sides. And then you can see we did the same thing here. And you can see about how much we took out right there. So this is a 1-inch block. So that's about what we did. And you can see, again, that's taken back to the apron on both sides. And here's one I'm working on. And you can see I already notched that out. That used to come all the way to the end here, right back to the apron, and then I came over here to the apron, and you can see that is the size piece we had to take out of there. And then all the legs will sit in place and have plenty of thread to thread on our wing nut. And when you're tightening up your wing nut, it helps if you wiggle the leg just a little bit to kind of get it seated perfect, and wiggle as you tighten, and that'll give you, I know you can't really tell by looking at the video, but it's a real nice tight fit, and you can easily get the wing nut off. So when you're at your event or whatever and you're done, just wiggle your leg a little bit. You can see you have plenty of clearance to get the leg back out. And again, put the wing nut back on. And that will just kind of pull the leg into place. Like I say, if you wiggle the leg a little bit as you tighten that wing nut, it'll get you a real nice snug fit. Okay, so we just have these last two legs to go, and then our little vendor display table is ready to go. All we would need to do is, finish it off in whatever paint and stain if we want to do that. So there it is, all finished up. It did come together basically like I expected. Let me show you this detail of the roof here, just so you can see how those blocks, see how we put in those blocks and that cleat. The roof just kind of sits on that block and it can't go nowhere. So that's kind of how that works. And then of course these blocks here sandwich those side pieces as well. So it all looks pretty good. Now I do have an idea for a little cap, a little decorative cap. I haven't put it on yet, but it's going to overhang quite a bit. So I'm going to have that decorative cap overhang about, maybe 10 inches or so. And the reason being is I wanted to be able to maybe hang a plant, or if I wind up using it for events and stuff, we do macrame, so I may hang a pretty macrame there or something like that, so that's one idea. Okay, now I want to give you some other things I was just kind of considering. The only thing I don't like about it, and it's not like a massive thing, but if you watch here, there is a little give to the roof. See if you can see that there. Okay, so what's holding that in place is one 3.5-inch screw. Okay, now what can eliminate that, and I might even possibly do it. The way to eliminate that is to take that screw out, because it's all glued up now. So we take the screw out and put in a bolt. Now, we can't really get to the top of up here. Those are still 3.5-inch screws. But I think if we ran a 3/8-inch bolt up, so we would have to recess it a little bit into this, the head of the bolt. So obviously this would still be flush. So the head of the bolt would have to be flush with the bottom of this. But if we do like a 4.5-inch, 3/8-inch screw up through the bottom and through the top, when we're assembling it, I think that takes away all that give. It's not a huge thing, but I could see where it could become a huge thing. Now, I will also say that these themselves, from a structural standpoint, I mean, these roof panels are kind of heavy. One thing you could do is eliminate the wood roof and do a fabric roof, and that would lighten it up considerably. But my point is, these little guys, they're not all that particularly structural. You know, right there, that's kind of a weak point right there. So they're not, you know, but I think normal usage, it would be fine. So one thought I did have, though, that I think would be fun, like if you were doing an event or something, and I think it would work really well, is up here we have kind of this open space. We could lay a couple of boards across, and then you'd have some additional room right here to hang some things. Or I thought maybe even you could mount some wood crates, and that would give you some additional display area. It just would depend on what you were actually displaying, but that was just another idea I had. Or you could, you know, hang some lights up in there, or you know, whatever. Those might be fun, those little tap lights, especially at night. You could get those little battery operated tap lights, those little LED lights, and light it up a little bit. That might be kind of nice. So it did come together, you know, basically like I dreamed it. And there's enough overhang here where you could definitely, now this is standard dining room table height here, 30 inches off the ground. So you could pull up a chair and even eat at this thing. One thing that I might try, because I think it would be pretty simple just to test, is on the back side there. So on the back side, run a board connecting these two pieces. Just screwing it in, just to see if that would give any additional side-to-side support. It may, and possibly even a board up here going from one post to the other. Screw it in just to see if, by doing that, if we would add any stability from a side-to-side standpoint. And if that did help, then what we could do is we could put in well, we could use T-nuts or something like that. T-nuts would be an option, or just a threaded insert, so that we would be able to remove those, and so we can attach them when we're using it, and we could easily remove it when we're not, obviously. So that might be something I try, just to see if that does help the side-to-side sway. I definitely think bolts at the bottom. I might take this off. You know, these, of course, I got my holes drilled now, so there's my holes right there. And then you can probably see under here, we just have a fender washer and a wing nut. So we just undo that, take the panels off. The panels just sit on there, so the roof panels can pop off, no issue there. And then those two come off. And then we did buy, when I was at the hardware store a minute ago, I had to go get these bolts for the top. We did buy some, they're called hanger lags or something like that, hanger bolts, which half of it's a lag and half of it's a threaded insert, so I can pop the legs on and off when I need to fold this up. So that's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed the process and maybe encourage you to try something similar yourself. Okay, we'll do a little addendum to our closing video. So I had a bit of an issue because I felt like the side-to-side motion on this was a little bit more than I wanted. And so I tried this support board. I just have it screwed in at the moment, but I just tried that support board at the bottom, and that stiffened it up real good. And then so now I've moved it to the top because I prefer the bottom to be flat and open. So, but by doing that, the side to side went away, and now the whole table moves like basically as one piece. So that will definitely require a couple of nut inserts, which we can do, and then we'll get either some knobs or some kind of like a wing nut type thing to screw that in place on site, because obviously all that's got to come apart. But that does solve the issue. I probably won't put bolts in there like I talked previously, because it does lock it all in, and we could even maybe use that for some signage or something. It's right at eye level, so we could put some signage in there and just kind of have a bonus sign there. So that will finish her up. Thanks for watching.